All right, I spoke with Daisy Serrano. Daisy is the managing partner of Make It Rain Capital. Her and her husband also have a podcast of the same name, Make It Rain. Daisy is breaking through barriers left and right, and she has staked her claim as being a very prominent leader in real estate, and she's helping others break through barriers. Daisy absolutely loves to give back. She's in several different associations. She loves talking to new investors to help them either from the passive side or the active side. Daisy's story on how she got into real estate is absolutely amazing. Daisy and her now husband, each week they ask each other, how can I support you this week? And with one of those, and you'll hear it in the episode, but with one of those weeks, her now husband said, come to a real estate conference with me. And the rest is history. Fun fact, my wife and I actually implemented this after I spoke with Daisy, and it's a really good way to deepen that relationship and truly support each other. Thank you so much for listening to Passive Investors Playbook. Again, my guest is Daisy Serrano. She is absolutely amazing, and she told several amazing stories. Thanks for listening. Welcome to Passive Investors Playbook. I'm your host, Charlie Hardage. In each episode, we'll sit down with successful people that turn to real estate to build and grow their wealth. We do a deep dive into why they chose real estate and what makes it so attractive to them. We explore why people in their industry could also benefit from passively investing in real estate. Whether you're a beginner or an experienced investor, a doctor or a professional athlete, love your job or hate your job, our show is here to help you build a profitable real estate portfolio while maximizing your free time and minimizing stress. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn from some of the best in the business. Welcome to Passive Investors Playbook. All right, we are back with another episode of Passive Investors Playbook. My name is Charlie Hardage. My guest today is Daisy Serrano. Daisy serves as the managing partner for Make It Rain Capital, a private equity multifamily investment firm focused on acquiring apartment properties. Daisy is a general partner in 218 units across 2 assets in Austin, Texas, and Tucson, Arizona, and is a limited partner in almost 500 units in Central Texas. With over 10 years of experience in international education and management, she has worked with clients from over 25 countries and managed international government scholarship accounts totaling more than $10 million. She is a leader with the Commercial Real Estate for Women crew and Real Estate Association of Latinx Professionals, REAL. She previously served on the Los Angeles and Austin chapter boards of Prospanica, the Association of Hispanic Professionals. Daisy's goals are to empower her community through mentorship and access, be a positive role model for her family, and retire her parents. Daisy holds a Bachelor of Science in Criminology from the University of La Verne, a Master of Science in Higher Education from California State University, Fullerton, and a Business Foundation certificate from Wharton University. Daisy, I'm really excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, excited to share and hopefully inspire and educate your audience. So thanks for having me, Charlie.
Yeah, absolutely. I had you're involved in a ton of different organizations and have a lot of different education, and so I want to dive into some of that. But do you mind talking a little bit more about you, sharing your background and your company's background as well?
Absolutely. I'm managing partner for Make It Rain Capital, as you mentioned. The name, everybody asks about the name. It came from the podcast, which we have with the same name, Make It Rain. Never really thought we would make rain of capital, but that's just what happened. But yeah, as managing partner, focus on supporting the acquisition, management, and disposition of multifamily assets, primarily here in Central Texas, but we also have one in Tucson, Arizona, as you mentioned. And I'm very involved in communities, different organizations, because I really believe in giving back and being of service to others. That's one of the goals that I write down every morning. So, yeah, just quite a bit going on. We have my husband and I were a husband and wife team, and we've expanded now the team beyond that as well. And we have a 1-year-old son who is a little Texan baby. We're based here in Austin, originally from California, and made the move out here a few years back. So yeah, it's a little bit about me and who I am.
That's awesome. So that's really cool that you and your husband are a team, because I know in this business, it's not all, well, and not just this business, but in a lot of businesses, it's, sometimes it's one of the partners are interested in something, in this case, real estate, and maybe not the other one. Was that how it was for you guys, where one of you had to be talked into it, or were you both interested in it? You're smiling.
Yeah, absolutely. That was definitely us. My husband, he has an engineering and business background and has been in sales for quite a while. And so he was all about investing, all about the numbers, all about the underwriting and the spreadsheet and all of that stuff. And I was not interested at all. And so it definitely took a while, but we started this thing when we were still dating, before we were even married or engaged, Charlie, where every Sunday we would go through our week and ask how we could support each other that week. And we've been doing this for years and years. And that particular week, he asked me, when I asked how I could support him, he said, just come to a meeting with me, come to a meetup. And so I couldn't say no, right? Because I was the one that asked how I could support. And so I did. And little by little, just started learning more about investing. I really saw within the investment world an opportunity for me to be able to retire my parents, which is very important for me. And so little by little, I just kind of learned more, got, caught that real estate bug. And we went from investing to being on the operating team. On the operating side of things, we left from California to Texas for multifamily to be able to be very active in our local market. So yeah, it was definitely a transition for us, right? It wasn't something I was thrilled about from day one.
So first off, I love that even before you guys were even engaged, you had sounds like a pretty solid relationship, and open lines of communication, which obviously for any relationship is absolutely huge. And so he was interested in real estate. You weren't, but you asked the question. You got yourself trapped and had to go to a meeting, real estate meetup, and probably slowly started learning. And then you caught the bug that he probably had for years. And so obviously this is a big thing, Daisy, because you both picked up and moved from California to Texas for multifamily. That's amazing. So how did you invest in any other properties besides multifamily?
No, so from day one, we invested when we were still dating together on our first multifamily in San Antonio. And then shortly after, invested in the second one. Those are the two passive investments. One has now gone full cycle and we've exited. The other one is still active now. But yeah, we kind of took a deep dive. I had never really invested into stocks or any other assets. I'd never bought a home either. I know a lot of people will get their start, owning their first home and maybe doing a few flips on the single family side and transition. I just went straight. We just went straight, I should say, and went directly into multifamily from day one.
That's awesome, because I feel like most people get their start. This is how I got my start. I knew I wanted to be in real estate. We owned a home and we moved. Instead of selling it, we rented it out. And you went from not owning a home to jumping right into multifamily, and I love that. A lot of single family investors eventually get into multifamily just because there's already the benefits of real estate, but then there's just so many more benefits of multifamily and being able to scale. What was so attractive to you about real estate and apartments?
Yeah, I think it was seeing, the business model, right? For one, it's that, you buy a property, you make improvements, you increase the worth of the property, right? The NOI of the property, net operating income, for those of your listeners who aren't as familiar. And all of that is revenue minus expenses, gives you the net operating income. But we just saw so many benefits, right? To be able to scale, to have the tax incentives as well, especially if you have at least one partner doing or as a professional full-time status. There's just so many tax incentives. And from the, I guess, more personal side of things too, is being able to provide housing for people, right? It's something that's very tangible. People will always need housing. There's other things that may come and go, right, in the market, but housing is one of those things that you can make a really big impact on. And so I think it was those like financial reasons and not seeing a ceiling, right? When I was in education, there was definitely a ceiling to what I could get paid. And in real estate, that just wasn't the case. And so I just saw it as a great opportunity. And I've always been a people person. I love being around people. So being able to do this as a team with others and surrounding yourself with the right people was a huge part of it. So when I first started learning about real estate, we would ask, people that were seasoned, that were in the industry for advice, for, coffee. And people were just so willing to meet and chat and share their experience. And I hadn't experienced that before. And so it was just such a welcoming community that there were no downsides that I saw other than leaving California and being far from my family, which for sure was a transition, right? But yeah, it's definitely been worth it.
That's awesome. Yeah, there's you mentioned seeing the business model, the value add, and you went over it, Daisy, but just to recap that, the value add strategy is increasing the NOI, the net operating income. So it's income minus operating expenses. And when you do that, you can either increase income and or decrease expenses, and the value of the property goes up. And I'm sure when you heard that, maybe you didn't get it right away, because I didn't. But after you really understood that, or after I really understood that, I was like, wow, this just makes so much sense. It's like flipping apartments, and I don't like that term, but I think a lot of people understand that.
Yeah, it's a very simple model, right? Because I realize that some people would try to explain it and get very, nitty gritty. And there is a lot of detail if you want to go into it. But all it is you buy, a place for somebody to live. They pay you rent, you pay the expenses. What's left over is the cash flow that you get at the end of the day. So the more units you have and the more cash flow, then the more, income you have coming in. And at some point that can replace your W-2 income, and then you would be able to leave your job, right? So I loved how straightforward it was from the get-go.
Yeah, love that. And you also mentioned multifamily offers the ability to scale, tons of tax incentives, which is phenomenal thing, through depreciation and bonus depreciation. And then you said from a personal side of things, you're able to have a big impact because you do provide housing. You're providing communities for people. So I love that. And then you also said something that I don't know if I've ever heard this in a podcast before, but you had a ceiling in your previous job, and you were in education. And even with your degrees, after a while, there's only so high you can go. And the higher your paycheck goes, the more hours you're probably working, the more people you're managing. And so there's a ceiling with education, but there's not one with real estate. It's really up to you, your husband, your team, what you can accomplish. And I love that because it's so true.
Yeah,
Um,
and the last point that I left out, Charlie, and I guess it's more of a personal one, but I think important nonetheless, is that we had also started talking about having a family, right? My husband and I. And I knew that once I had a child, I didn't want to have to go back to a full-time job and be away from him or her for a long time. And so building the business gave us the opportunity for me to be on maternity leave for 6 months completely. And even when I did come back, do so on my own terms and do so part-time and ramp up, right? Not have to be away from my son who's just turned 1 for a long time. So I think especially for women, but I think for all parents, right? Knowing that you have that flexibility was a huge determinant too. And knowing, okay, I'm leaving California. I'm going to be away from family. It's a huge sacrifice, but I'll have that time for my children because of this step that we're taking now before we even have the children in our lives.
I love that. I love that you were both forward thinking and saying, look, there's a better opportunity if if we move to Texas. It doesn't come without sacrifice, but it would provide so much more flexibility, time freedom, and all that for your family, for your unborn children at the time, right? And so big decision. I'm sure it's paid off so far, and I'm sure it's going to continue to pay off. And then something else, Daisy, that you had mentioned was you're a people person. You love being around a team, surrounding yourself with like-minded individuals and investors. And it sounds like you're doing that with all of those organizations that I mentioned in the intro. Will you talk about that a little bit? And I know you love giving back. You mentioned that at the beginning. You want to be of service, and all of those organizations. I'm sure you're doing a lot more than just that. But can you talk about maybe those organizations a little bit, and just what you're doing with those in those organizations?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, a big thing has always been growth. That's something that my husband Luke and I connected in on for from day one. So having that personal development, professional development piece is huge, right? And being part of these organizations, but being part of the commercial real estate for women crew that is local here in Austin. It's a national organization, but it really gave me a local community of women who are badass, if I can say that word on your podcast, who are doing amazing things. And they're across all industries in commercial real estate, right? And so bridging that gap to see more women in leadership positions, right? The empowerment, the education, the camaraderie, the support, like that's been amazing. And within the organization, I'm part of U Crew, which is for university students. And so we do a challenge every year and provide a scholarship for 3 to 5 university students that are local here. They do a competition, and then at the end, we award scholarships and memberships to those students as well. But we've had over 20 students participate in any given year, and you just see the impact, right, of somebody who doesn't know from an early age that this is possible, that you can. Who grows up thinking I want to be in commercial real estate when I grow up? Nobody, right? Like almost nobody knows that this is even possible. So it's been amazing to see that. The impact that it makes. And with Real, the Real Estate Association for Latino Professionals, when I transitioned from education to real estate, I noticed a gap. I didn't see a lot of people that looked like me, that were women, that were Latinas. And I saw that as a deterrent at first, and quickly realized that it's a good thing, right? Nobody looks like me, so I will be remembered. But on the other side of that, there's not a lot of role models that look like me in this space. And so I really sought out an organization where I had that community, right, of having like-minded backgrounds with other people that were in commercial real estate. And I joined this organization when it was getting off the ground. I was one of the original volunteers. And yeah, I have just seen it grow so much and seen the impact that we've had as well. I looked for over a year for another Latina who was doing what I wanted to do at the level I wanted to do it. And it took me that long to find her. So for me, that was a red flag of, there needs to be more access and more representation in the space.
That's so amazing. And I love that, because I think a lot of people get into this business, Daisy, of multifamily syndication or real estate in general, to give back on some level. And maybe that's just mentoring, new or aspiring operators, someone who wants to be active, and you're, helping them along the way. Maybe they have a charity or want to start a charity. But it sounds like you've been doing that for several years, just in general, which I commend you for that, because it's a lot of time and energy that I'm sure you spend on it. But I'm sure you've gotten so many rewards, just maybe not even monetarily, right? But just that fulfillment that you get from giving back. And I know when we talked initially, probably 6 weeks ago, we talked about that a little bit, and giving back, and you just want to be of service. And I love that you don't just say it, you're doing it, and you've been doing it for a long time. So that's so cool. Yeah. And I definitely think it's important that I like what you said. There's not a lot of people that look like you, and so you will be remembered. And I think a lot of people don't have that mindset. They'd be like, well, there's not a lot of people that look like me, or not a lot of people with my background, so it's not a fit. right? And you're like, no, screw that. It is a fit. I'm going to make it a fit, but now you are standing out because of who you are and what you're doing. And so I think that that just requires just such an amazing mindset and being having a hard mind, right? Like just not listening to maybe friends and family that say you can't do it, but you are doing it and you're doing it really well. So I love that.
Yeah, I
Um,
appreciate it. And I definitely have to say that it came with time, right? I wasn't
yeah,
in that mental space when I first transitioned over, but having a husband who would always just cheer me on. I know you can do this. Even when I was insecure about X, Y, and Z, like he was like, no, you deserve to be in this room. You deserve to be in this space. Even when we would go to meetings with brokers or other people and the men would not look at me, right? Like they would only look at him. And so, it took a while for sure. But I think once I owned up to it and realized that my perceived weakness was really my strength, it really made a huge difference.
yeah. And I don't know if this is what you felt, Daisy, but when you're kind of talking, imposter syndrome comes up, and that's something that I suffer from even now. I've gotten a lot better, but what's funny is I think everyone does that, right? If I'm like, ooh, should I actually be here? I didn't have anyone saying you deserve to be in this room, and I think at first I was like, I'm just not, I shouldn't be here. But the reality is, I think everyone suffers from that at one point or another, right? When they're trying something new, and so that's awesome that your husband is such a great support structure for you, and that you guys are doing this together. I love that so much. Something else I want to talk about, Daisy, and I'm a millennial as well. But I know a lot of times when people hear that term millennial, it's this negative connotation, right? Oh, you guys grew up with the internet and all this stuff. I actually didn't grow up with the internet. I didn't get it until high school, but that's beside the point. But do you, with some of your investors, or some of the ways you give back, is that focus on millennials, or um, what's kind of the demographic that you work with?
Yeah, so when we first started investing and sharing what we were doing with other people, we had friends that were interested in asking how did we do it, right? What were the steps that we were doing? And so we started a podcast focused on millennials because we wanted to spread that message, right? And we realized people who resonated with us were us in one capacity or another, whether it was age, whether it was gender, whether it was background, whether it was education, right? Whether it was industry, whatever that looked like. So we always say like we are our investors are us, right? And so with talking to millennials, it was just easy because it was who we were. We didn't have to be this brand or be this thing. It's literally who we are, and so that's who we're speaking to. But the interesting part from that, Charlie, is that we don't only have millennials as investors, right? The message it carries across for different people from different generations, different ages, different places in their career as well. So yeah, it's continued now to where all of the content that we have is not just for millennials, but the brand sort of stood right where people know us as the millennial couple. And so a lot of times when we would go to events, we were the youngest millennial couple there, and so we just embraced that again, right? Something that was maybe a weakness, and they thought that we were too young to be in the space. We just said, okay, you're gonna label us as millennials and have that negative connotation. Well, we're gonna label ourselves before you even say it, and we're gonna turn it into a positive.
Yeah, I love that. So that I've heard this when in marketing, employees, or in the marketing role, when you're marketing, you market to one person, right? You don't market to every single person. But if you try to market to everyone, then no one's really going to get that message, right? And so I love that you embraced, even though I'm also a millennial, you embraced that bad word of millennial, and you turned that into a positive. And then anyone that said, "Oh man, this is great. You don't have to be a millennial, and you could still invest," but it just resonates with so many people when you kind of speak to yourself, right? So I love that you did that. You took that negative, turned it into a positive, which sounds like that's a big theme in your life, Daisy, which is great. Because I think it's easy to get down on a lot of times on things you can't even control. But if you have, again, going back to the mindset piece, if you have the right mindset, you can you can turn anything, any negative thing into a positive. So I love that you did that, and that you have that podcast going on, Make It Rain podcast. And we'll probably pitch that towards the end of the conversation later too, and plug your website and all that.
Yeah, well, you said something that really stood out to me, Charlie, which is when we were talking about marketing, right? And who you're speaking to. And I used to get really intimidated by that word marketing and, social media and putting out content and my face being out there, right? I definitely had a process where I came to appreciate that. But at first, it was really daunting. And so, for any of your listeners who are starting, whether it's on the investing side or they're thinking maybe they want to be general partners and they want to be active and they have to quote unquote market, John Kasman has a wonderful podcast and focused on marketing. And I heard on his podcast a long time ago that marketing is an extension of your essence, of who you are. And so once for me, I embraced that marketing is an extension of who I am, then I didn't feel the need to be someone I'm not to fit into this industry. So I would encourage your listeners, anybody who is wanting to start, putting out content, to be yourself as much as possible. And it does get easier along the way, but it is very intimidating at first.
Yeah, it really is, especially if you don't want to be in the limelight, right? You Daisy, you mentioned you didn't really necessarily want your face being seen, at least at first, but then again, going back to that mindset, Daisy, you changed that, and I love that quote, marketing is an extension of who you are. I love that. So how did you, I think at the time he was your boyfriend, but how did you guys come up with the funds for your first investment? I believe that was in San Antonio.
Yeah, it was from disposable income from our job. So my husband Luke has been in sales for a number of years. He still is now. And so he had income coming in from that. It was the very first, I remember, big paycheck that he got. I think it was $25,000. He requested a check specifically and had it sent to the apartment at the time. We were living in LA. And he cashed it, but then he put it on the fridge, right? And he said, "This is for investing." And he put it into this account that was called a sacred account. So for this sacred account, only money goes in, nothing comes out unless it's for investment. And it was very sacred, right? That did not get used. If the world was falling apart, God forbid, there were probably bigger problems at that point, but it just didn't get used for anything else. And for me, I was in a place where for the first time in my career, I actually had disposable income because of a career change that I had made recently. And so I had never been in a place to where I had an option of what to do, right? And so that was the first time for me. And I remember just feeling, um, I was just like on a journey. I was so excited to put money away every month. And, a lot of people are like, excited about the restaurant that's coming out or, going to a new place to vacation. And I love vacationing and traveling. But at that time, I was just so focused on putting money away. So I was looking at what could I cut? What expenses could I cut? What more could I do? So I wasn't, you know, using up right my paycheck, so then I could put it away to invest. So for both of us, it came from our W-2 jobs that we were putting money away for a while.
Well, and Daisy, you say that it came from the jobs, but I think in addition to that, it came from you being focused, right? Because if you weren't focused on investing, then sure, that huge check that your at the time boyfriend got probably could have gone to other things like traveling or a nicer apartment or wherever you were living, but you were focused, you were extremely intent on investing, and cut things out, which you don't really hear that a lot. I don't think, some people pinch pennies, but it's not necessarily to invest, right? To invest sooner. So I love that you both did that. You're both, number one, on the same page, you're together in this, but then number two, you figured out how you could make it happen. Cause maybe you didn't have that huge, check, that commission check that he had, but you maybe had to give up some other stuff that he necessarily didn't have to. And so I love that. Why did you guys want to invest so much? Like, what was it that you were, what was it in you, Daisy, that said, I'm okay giving up, A, B, and C because I want to invest sooner rather than later?
Yeah, my husband, I'm sure, has other reasons, but for me, it was the why was so much bigger for me, Charlie, right? I saw, I would write my goals down every day in the morning. And, the more I broke down how I would be able to accomplish those goals, one of them being able to retire my parents, that just seemed impossible, right, to do within the space that I was in. And so, I knew that there was more, that there was something that I could do. And for the first time in my life, to be quite frank, I had an option on how to do it, right? There was a pathway. It was just a matter of going through the motions and doing it. Before that, I didn't have an option. I didn't have a pathway. I didn't see the light. And so I think just having such a clear focus on the bigger goal. And you mentioned earlier, or you asked earlier, which one of us was got into real estate first, and how was that process, right? My husband never put anything on me, no expectations. What he did, he helped me see how my why connected with real estate, how real estate could support my why, which one of those, as I mentioned, was retiring my parents. And so for anybody who's wanting to get their spouse on board, don't focus on the vehicle. Don't focus on real estate. Real estate is just the vehicle on how to get there. Figure out, what is your significant other value? What do they want? What is their why? What drives them? And then tie that. And that, I will assure you, will get you so much further.
That is amazing. How I get that question from investors sometimes of, I'm on board, my partner isn't, or my spouse isn't. How did you get your, and they're talking to me, how did I get my wife on board? And I think it took me a lot longer probably than you saw the light, but it took me a long time. But I really do think how I showed her how real estate could support our why, right? And so you just said that in a sentence. I wish I heard that years ago, but you wrote that down extremely eloquently, and I really appreciate that, Daisy, because just seems in general that you're extremely focused. You write down your goals. You wanted to get into real estate because just it could support your goals and your why and your family and your future. And I love that you also said your why was so much bigger. And so that's why you were able to save money, cut some unnecessary expenses out, and invest. I just love that so much.
Yeah.
So Daisy, what are the company goals of Make It Rain Capital over the next year or so?
Yeah, I love this question because in preparation, I went and looked at our VTO, Vision Traction Organizer. So really, the big goal for this next year for us is to take down 1 to 2 deals, but take them down with the right partners, with the right investors, doing good for the community, right? So very straightforward. No number in terms of AUM or how many units. It's just, being able to take down 1 to 2 deals with the right partners in the right markets with the right investors is really the end goal.
I love that. And so you're saying 1 to 2 deals with the right partners, with the right end goal, regardless of, and you said AUM, so assets under management, that's the dollar amount basically, and regardless of the number of units. So, and I love that. Number of properties, AUM or assets under management, and doors. It's kind of a vanity stat. It helps to some degree, but in reality, it's overrated. So I love that that's your goal is to make sure that it's the right community with the right team, as opposed to X amount of doors valued at Y amount.
Yeah, and my husband, he's the numbers guy. So he can shoot out numbers for sure, between this and this amount, and if the cap rate is this and all this good stuff. But for me, it's just, plain and easy.
Yeah, love that. Are you an asset manager at all?
I support. So I'm not the
Okay.
main asset manager for either of our properties that we're active on. There's active asset managers on both. And they have the experience, right? So something that was big for us, it's learning and working with people where we can learn as we go. And so that's definitely been one of the good things, right? In the process, is that we don't have to know everything from the start. Part of being in a team is that you bring your skill set and other people bring theirs, and you're able to learn from each other. And where you're weak, or you have some more to learn, then somebody else can come in and bring that experience.
Yeah. You're just so organized. I mean, you're definitely on top of it. You're on top of your life. You're owning it. You're controlling it. And eventually, you're going to make an awesome asset manager because you're just on top of everything. I have a lot to learn from you. So, but
Well,
I'm getting there.
in full disclosure, we do have a 1-year-old, so our life has gotten a little exciting
Yeah,
as of late, where I don't get to do my goals every day anymore, or there's a few things that are definitely off the tracks, but we're embracing it, right? This is part of the growth and part of growing our family, and so yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far.
that's awesome. How do you think your previous profession in education, how do you think that's helped you in real estate?
Hmm. You mentioned imposter syndrome earlier, and that was definitely something that I experienced coming in to real estate at first. And then I quickly realized that me having a very different experience, being in education, I was a counselor for a number of years. And so a lot of that is, really understanding how to listen to people and understand their story, and that everybody has a unique perspective and a different why and a different purpose in life. And so a lot of that now translates with, conversations with investors, right? It's not just a numbers game of we have this deal, you have this need in terms of your finances and what you're looking to do. It's so much more than that, right? It's understanding them from a very personal level and matching the right deal with the right investor. So I think a lot of that has come in event planning, right? From when we moved from California to Texas, we didn't know anybody. So we started a meetup the second month after we'd arrived into
Wow.
Austin. And so a lot of that, the organization, the planning, the reaching out to people, finding a venue, like all of those things I had done in my position before, and just learning how to work with people and understand where they are, right? I think we mentioned team quite a bit on this episode. You work with so many people across, asset management, acquisitions, your property manager, your lender, your lawyer. Like there's so many people that are part of this team, and I was used to that. I was used to navigating, working up, right, in the ladder, so to say, with people that were in executive level positions in my previous positions, and working down, right, working with interns and people that I had to train and be very detail oriented in that sense. And so I think all of those things, right? You mentioned organization. That's actually one of my passions. If I could just like make over a room and like clean and organize, ooh, like I just get the chills thinking about it. So I think being hyper organized and like folders inside of folders, and like nothing ever gets lost for me. I shouldn't say nothing. Almost nothing gets lost because everything has a place. So all of those skills that I didn't see where they would fit in now, as you mentioned, right? I'm realizing, yeah, these are definitely my strengths and my skill sets.
Yeah, and Daisy, it goes back to what you said a few minutes ago about since when I said you would make a great asset manager because you're so organized. On these teams, on these general partnership teams, there's 3 people to 10 people, and everyone has different skill sets. And so I think where maybe you're bad at something, like, right, you're not great at numbers, well, your husband is, right? Or if something needs better organization, that's where you come in, and maybe you kick Luke to the side a little bit, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know,
Well, that's why.
he could be organized too, I don't know.
Oh, he's not as organized as I am. I'll put it
Okay.
that way. But I think that's so important, right? Because you don't have to do everything. And
Right.
I think embracing your own skill set and what you bring in and knowing what that is, right? I definitely encourage your listeners, if you were like me once upon a time, I didn't think that. So I love talking and having conversations, but even more than that, Charlie, I love connecting with people. And I never realized that that was a strength and that that was a skill set, and that that's not something that everybody brings to the table. And so really doing an analysis, right, and figuring out what your strength is, even if it is something like connecting with people, and it's not, you can't put a number to it, you can't measure it, but in your heart that that's something that is important for you and that makes you stand out, leverage that to your favor.
Yeah, and Daisy, I love what you said when you're talking about being a counselor and in education. Everyone has different whys, and so you're able to listen to their story, know what they're looking for. You get to know them, not just, hey, you're a number, you're an email, but hey, you're actually a person, and there's that connection, and then you can match them up with different investment opportunities. And you said that, and that is so true, because not everyone is looking for the same investment, right? If you have a deal that, hey, you can double your money in 5 years or less, some people are going to be like, hey, sign me up. And some people are going to be like, I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for something else. And so I like that you pointed that out, because there's so many different types of investments, so many different ways people can invest, that it's not a one size fits all. And so I love that you know your investors and connect with them, and then you don't, you can tell them, hey, I thought of you when I thought when we found this deal because of A, B, and C, and it matches up with their criteria and where they are in their journey.
Yeah, and sometimes we even bring them deals that aren't ours, right? So recently, one of my mentors had an investment opportunity, and I reached out to people that I knew in my heart they would resonate with the mission and what, that opportunity was. And so it doesn't have to be my own investment, right? If I know somebody is focused on X, Y, and Z, and I come across an operator or a company that has that opportunity, why not connect them? I don't lose anything, right?
Yeah, goes back to that mindset, the scarcity and versus abundance mindset. You don't lose something just because you are helping someone else, right? You're helping someone else. Going back to the mentorship with all the organizations you're involved with, again, you might not make a penny right then and there, but you will get it back tenfold in some capacity down the road. Daisy, I know we have a few minutes left. Unfortunately, I'd love to talk to you for forever. Although you have a child that you have to take care of too. So, but do you have a recent book that you've read or listened to that really stands out?
Yeah, I'm going to share two because I can't not. One is EOS, entrepreneurial. Um, oh God, I'm blanking on the second one now. Organizational system. I want to say it's I read it a while back, but we base our entire business strategy around that. So that's been amazing. We go back and revisit it every so often. So that's been instrumental just to growing our company and to being able to focus really on what's most important. And most recently, I started. This is actually my very first book I read that was real estate related. It's called Tax Free Wealth. And it really talks about, and it's by Tom Wheelwright. And I'm now rereading it with a book club that I have focused on investors. And it was the first time that I understood the benefits of what you could do with real estate in terms of taxes. And you mentioned this off call that you thought it was fake at first, right? It was too good to be true. You're like, how can this be possible? When I read Tax Free Wealth, that's exactly what I thought. I was like, there's no way that this is legal, right? That people can do this. And so it's been years and years that I read it. So now I'm going back and rereading it and discussing it in this group because I think it kind of brings you back to basics, right? To the foundation of what's important. And now that we have, more disposable income and income from deals that are coming full cycle, it's ever more important, right? But I don't have all those details in my head. So I would say those two things. If you're looking at, you have a business and you want to really focus in EOS, Traction. Actually, the book is called Traction. Yeah, and that's been instrumental for us.
Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I had to look it up. I've not heard of that. I'm not as smart as I pretend to be. But Gino Wickman, Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business. And then the other one was Tax Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright. And for the audience, you probably heard that name before, but Tom Wheelwright is a guru CPA. He's Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Robert Kiyosaki's personal CPA and all that. So the two books, Tax Free Wealth and Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business. Awesome. Thank you. And Daisy, I know we kind of talked about this from, in the next 12 months, you're looking at getting into one to two deals with the right partners, right communities. But what would you say that people could expect to see from you, your husband, your business over the next 5 years?
That's a great question. Over the next 5 years, I mean, I think I would say more of the same, right? We really want to make an impact. We really want to show others by example that you can, come into this business having a completely different background, not seeing anybody that looks like you, not having any exposure via your family or anybody that you know, and be able to make it, right? And have a good reputation in this industry. And so, I think for us in the next 5 years is continuing to grow and acquire more property and acquire more property with the right partners. That's really important for us because I think early on when we started, We just saw so many people partnering left and right. And that was great because we're like, oh, you can start and partner and you don't have to do everything. But also when we've realized and seen from firsthand experience, with friends and colleagues that if you don't partner with the right person, it can really make or break not just the deal and the investment, but your own life, right? It's such a big part of what we are and who we do and our reputation. So I think reputation comes first. And when you partner with the right people, deals get done and you're able to help the residents, you're able to help, the investors, you're able to help your partners. It could be a win-win-win if it's with the right people.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I like that win-win-win terminology. I use that a lot because it's not just a win-win, right? There's investors, there's you, there's the property management, and there's residents, obviously. So it's gotta be a win for all parties. Otherwise, it's a loss for all parties. What would be the best way to reach out to you if someone wants to learn more about you or your goals? They want to invest with you, or maybe they want to figure out how they can talk to their partner and get them interested in real estate.
Yeah, all of our information is on our website, makeitraincapital.com. So you can go there, find our social media. We're most active on Instagram, being the true millennials that we are, and on LinkedIn. So the website will have everything for people to reach out.
Cool. Makeitraincapital.com. We'll make sure that's in the show notes. I know your podcast is on there too. So if anyone wants to check that out, it's like the third or fourth button on the top right. So definitely check that out. And then I know you mentioned that being a millennial, you're on Instagram, but you're on some other social media. So we'll make sure to put all those links in the show notes. And then you just one more time, makeitraincapital.com. Daisy, it's been amazing talking to you. I love, I brought this word up a ton, mindset. I'm a huge proponent in mindset. I think that has to change first before a lot of people just see the benefits of real estate. And you were very open and transparent with, you weren't the real estate guru in the family, and now you are, or you're one of them. But I love that, your mindset is always changing. You're always getting better. Just because you didn't see anyone else that looked like you doesn't mean that you couldn't do it. I think that's a very amazing point to this whole interview, and just shows how much how big your why is, right? And what you're about. So I love that so much. Thanks for being here, Daisy. It's been great talking to you.
Yeah, likewise, Charlie. Thank you for, giving me the platform, right, to talk to your audience, to share my experience, and to just remind them and remind you, if you're listening, that all it takes is one person to change the trajectory of an entire family. And I realized that that's not just me. My siblings are also doing amazing things. But when you look at the impact that you can have generations down the line, you can impact your children if you choose to have, great grandchildren, right? 5, 6 generations down the line, just by one person who made a different choice in life. And so just something to leave your audience with, that can be you, right? And it's never too late to start. So thank you, Charlie, for having me on. It's been a blast.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to today's show, brought to you by H&K Investment Group, your home for passive investing. If you want to learn more about how you can invest with us, please check out our website at hkigllc.com. Don't forget to like this episode and subscribe to our podcast. Please leave us a review to let us know how we are doing. Feel free to connect with me directly on LinkedIn or Facebook. As always, I'm your host, Charlie Hardage. Catch you next time.